Hi, welcome to my channel. I was thinking today why we are talking about women who are important, women in engineering, in science, in AI, only when it is a day of female scientists, when it is a Mother's Day, a female day, a Mother's Day or something like that. Why don't we talk every day about that? Why waiting for some specific term in the year that somebody else designated to be particularly good for this? Let's begin. Actually, I think that it's good that female scientists and women in AI or in other scientific and engineering pursuits are important and famous and they're making headlines. But I think much more important is to make visible women who are not famous and doing that job, because they are hardworking individuals who usually excel despite the odds. They found a way to pursue something which is reserved for men, and they're usually against the odds. So I would like to see the change that in, let's say, 10 years' time or even shorter, no one is actually questioning the fact that a female is coding, that a female is resolving problems, that a female is a top scientist and is representing a country or actually a whole community that she belongs to. I decided to talk about my female heroes, and I call this series On Her Shoulders because our mothers, our grandmothers, our grand-grandmothers, and all the significant women who actually paved the way for what we do today are our ancestors, and those are the giants and we are on their shoulders. So let me tell you about my grandmother. She was really exceptional character. She was born in 1900s in a small village in nowadays the Republic of Serbia, and she belonged to a poor family. They were peasants who are living in very modern terms without eating meat every day, relying on a very modest diet, working physically very much so, and they were living a completely different life. She survived very, very nasty changes in history, not to mention Balkan Wars, First World War, Second World War. She survived famine, she survived several pandemics. She lost 2 children due to the cough pandemic. And nevertheless, she excelled as a professor in history when majority of the country were illiterate. Her name was Ljubica and her maiden name was Bojanic. Later she became Čukić, married to my grandfather, and after his death she remarried to Aleksandar Blaznavac, who was one of the last persons in Serbia with that name. I remember my granny as someone who was never complaining about her life. She never thought about difficulties, although she survived many. In the beginning of Second World War, she actually became a refugee from the part of the country where Serbians were prosecuted, Novi Pazar, and she escaped with my little father, who was 3 years old at the time, to come to Kragujevac, which is actually just survived the massacre induced by German occupier, who mainly killed majority of male population of the time in only a couple of days in 1941. So she became a professor in the first Serbian lyceum called Kragujevačka Gimnazija, and I was a pupil of the same school much later. So she basically contributed to educating many intellectuals in our country back then, and she couldn't stand going to a pension, so she activated again after retirement, and she went to a village in the mountain to teach village kids until she could function. I remember her reading totally oblivious to the rest of the world, because she loved her books and she actually infected me with that love of history and knowledge. And I can still remember the stories I heard for the first time sitting on her shoulders and listening to hypnotic content from Greek mythology, stories about Egyptian, and I particularly liked the old world stories. And she was very talented storyteller because she was teaching kids history, right? And she needed to have very dramatic tone of voice and depicting something which sparks your imagination. I'm really thankful to her for that. But most importantly, she was really a moral bedrock, and she's still the basis what I am, of my moral foundation and what I truly believe. And I think of her almost every day because I recognize that part of myself is coming from her. That's me. That's who I am. That's who I strive to be. So I hope that you will think more about significant women in your life, and please share your thoughts with me. Who was your most significant woman? Who are you thinking about every day?